Welcome to the VGC Podcast. My name is Christopher Knowles, and today we are answering more TikTok comments. You guys asked me a lot of questions on the TikTok page at Volleyball Growth Coach, so I am going to kind of cover a lot of those comments and questions over the next couple weeks with this podcast, and hopefully it helps you. If it does help you, share the show with a teammate or a friend that you know can really benefit from a show like this that talks about volleyball and how you can improve your skills and abilities. So, as always, we dive straight in here on the VGC podcast. So the first question is how to make a spin serve more consistent. So I actually jump serve as well, so this is kind of an easy one to answer since I've worked through it as well. But the way that I've found to make a jump serve more consistent is really two big picture things, and then I'll break it down in detail for both. But the first biggest thing is constantly getting as many possible reps as you possibly can every single day. Where I think my jump serve really took off and really started to grow at a rapid pace was during my senior year of high school. And the reason that is because I really kind of already had hitting and blocking down in my senior year of high school, so I wanted to use that season to develop other parts of my game that were maybe not the best, and that was really my serving and passing, right? So I utilized every single day in practice as a chance to improve my jump serve, and that was just constantly getting reps of doing it over and over and over and over and over again, right? But every single time I was working on that jump serve, I wasn't just tossing it up and doing it and be, oh, that didn't go in. Okay, try again. And then, oh, it didn't go in. Oh, it did go in, right? And just seeing the result. What I really focused on was having an intention every single time I was doing a jump serve and working on it, right? Because if every time we just work on a skill, or most importantly jump serving, and there's no really intention or focus on areas that are holding us back from having a consistent serve and areas that are helping us have a good serve, then we don't really know what we should focus on more in order to make the serve better, right? So if we're just serving over and over and over and be like, okay, I got the reps and I'm just going to get better one day, then it's not going to be you're not going to see results as quick as you possibly can, compared to if you're having an intention and you're actually focused on something every single time. So for me, I was really focusing on my footwork of not going way too early, right? Utilizing that first step to be slow and to watch the toss that I gave myself and then go up and hit it. And then really focusing on making sure I was getting a high contact, not dropping my elbow, not hitting it too far out in front of me, making sure I was tossing it up high enough every single time and focusing on that. So I made sure that I was giving myself enough time to go get it. So I think the way you really truly make a jump serve or a spin serve more consistent is truly by doing it over and over and over again, but with an intention and with a focus of where you can improve in the tactical side of that serve, right? So for me, it was tossing it higher, maybe hitting it harder, getting on top of it, right? Not rushing into my approach when I'm doing my jump serve. Having focus points like that allow you to kind of pick apart your jump serve piece by piece and then improve those small pieces that all add up to your jump serve. So when you improve those smaller pieces, the whole jump serve gets better and more consistent as a whole. So I think that's definitely the number one thing that I've personally seen the biggest results with of jump serving is just doing it 1,000 times or probably even more. But then also the second thing I would say to make a jump serve more consistent is definitely in the approach. Like I just kind of touched on a little bit, but the approach is huge, right? I've seen so many young volleyball players send me in videos of how can I make my jump serve better? And they are just sprinting into their jump serve. There's no timing to their approach or anything, and they're going more forward than up. So that's my biggest thing is it's all in the toss, in the approach, right? So first it's doing it 1,000 times and getting the reps in and doing it focused and with an intention. But then the second piece of it is making sure you're getting a good approach and a good toss. You master those three things and the rest of it will fall in line. So first thing is the approach, something that I just kind of touched on, but not sprinting into it and not being super lazy on the approach. You want to utilize your first step as that timing step. It should be slow. You just step into that first step, toss it, and then wait until you see where your toss goes, and then finish the rest of your approach aggressively. But you want that first touch to be slow and able to give yourself time to see where that ball went so you can go and get it and be more efficient with your serve. So definitely getting your approach right is huge, but then also the toss as well. I've seen that so many young players toss it 60 feet in the air because they saw that's how Alex Knight did it, or people at Long Beach did it, or people at GCU did. Like, these guys in college toss it that high because they're 6'9", and they need it that high to get their body up enough and like give themselves enough room and enough time to get up and actually swing on top of the ball, right? So if you're not 6'9" and Division I athlete that's already jump served 100,000 times in your whole career, then you shouldn't be tossing it that high. And I think I talked about it on the last podcast episode, but it's essentially your toss should be based off how tall you are and how quick you are. That's what I've found is the best way to do it. With your toss, if you are a little bit shorter, then it shouldn't be a super high toss, right? Because if you're a little bit shorter and it's super high, it's going to be very difficult to try and locate that ball and actually time that ball when it's coming on its way down faster to actually get it at the perfect point to where you can hit it over, right? It's just it causes your serve to have a very lower percentage of going in, right? So the toss is a big thing of, if you're not as tall, don't toss it as high as people who are tall. And then on the other end of it is how quick you are. If you're not on the taller end, but you're extremely fast and you can get to a ball really quickly, then it might be good to utilize a lower toss because you're quick enough to get there and it's easier to locate when it's lower, right? So, but if you're not quick enough, then the ball should be tossed higher, right? And that's why a lot of these guys who are like 7 foot toss it so high, because they're 7 foot, they're not that fast, so they need that much time to get up and get high enough to actually get a good contact on that ball. But if you're shorter and quicker, then I would definitely say go for a shorter toss because you can get there fast enough and it's easier to locate when it's not super high. But if you're taller and slower, kind of like me, you want like a medium to high toss to give yourself enough time to locate it and actually get there and get under it and get a good serve. So those are the three biggest things if you want a more consistent jump serve, is making sure you're focusing on that approach and the toss first, because once you master those two things, the rest of it will take care of itself. And then just doing it, like, something can't become consistent if you're not working on it consistently, right? That's just kind of how it works, right? So if you break it down, the more you consistently work on your jump serve and have an intention and a focus with it, the quicker and the better it will become more consistent in practice and in games and all that great stuff. Question number 2. What skill besides setting is most important for a setter? So I think the biggest thing that I've seen, especially with my first year at McKendree, that I've seen with a lot of the higher level setters, even if you watch, like, I watched Japan versus Poland in the VNL recently, and their setter does this as well, and my setter at McKendree did this, and I've seen a lot of high level setters do this thing, and it's being able to eye check the block and utilize what you see on the defensive end, right? So when you're setting, a lot of people, if they just have like a really great outside, will just keep feeding that outside, even though the opposite might be 6'7", 6'8", and is really great at blocking, right? So the more, like, yes, setters who, like, as a setter, you have to be able to set the ball consistently and well and accurately and be able to utilize how much strength you're putting into the ball and the placement of the ball and all that stuff. That's core basics for a setter. But I think a lot of the higher level setters that I've seen on TV and players playing with them, all that good stuff, is their ability to see the block and see the defense and exploit those problems in those things, right? So last night at open gym, for example, we were playing and we went up against this team. We won, so a team came up from the court below us, and their middle was maybe 5'6" at most, right? And our middle was 6'9". So our middle got set a ton, right? Because that's a little bit more, like, that's more obvious than daylight and nighttime. It's like, duh, you're obviously going to set that guy. But that's just an example of like seeing and being aware of the other side of the net and what's going on their side and how to exploit that, right? And so something for me as well that I've seen is like, as the ball is getting passed to setters, they'll do a little eye check and see the block. And then that little read can tell so much about what's open, who to set, and what the best course of action is for the setter. So like, for example, there was a play, Japan versus Poland, where the opposite in the middle were biting I think they were going way too far over to the opposite, right? So that left a big gap kind of in the middle right center of the court. So the setter eye checked, saw that tiny little gap, and then set the bic, and then the bic hit right down that gap, and they weren't close enough to make that block, right? And that's just an example. You can go check that on YouTube. It's like Japan versus Poland in the VNL this year. But essentially what that is that skill of being able to either see beforehand of like, hey, the outside is the shortest blocker, so I'm going to set my oppo here, or the middle isn't really great at blocking on the move, so I'm going to set my middle on a 3, right? Being able to exploit those weaknesses in the other side, but then also the eye checking of being able to read a block as the play is unfolding, and then quickly being able to oh, the outside's going way too far, I'm going to set the oppo inside, or the opposite on the other side is leaving way too early, so I'm going to set the middle on a 3 or a 1 or whatever, right? And positioning your players in a place to succeed, right? Because I'm that big believer in always bettering the ball, that if you get a good pass, you should make a great set and make an amazing swing, and then always just bettering the ball. And so as a setter, the way you can really do that is not only like physically and tactically giving them a great set, but giving them a great set at the right moment based on what you see on the other side, right? So that's the biggest thing for me is, if you want to have a higher level skill as a setter, then it's definitely block awareness of what's going on the other side of the net, and being able to eye check and see what's going on as the play is unfolding, being able to relay that data and information of what you saw, and then exploit those weaknesses based on what you saw with the block. If someone's leaving too early, if someone's undersized, if someone isn't great at blocking a certain area, and then setting the according player on your side that can best convert in that situation, right? So that's a little bit of a stretched out answer for the same thing, but I think that's my biggest thing. So if you see as a setter that the outside is the shortest blocker out of all 3, then probably set the oppo, right? And then communicate with the oppo, or the oppo will see it himself that, hey, I should probably hit line over this smaller blocker, right? But then if you see when eye check is someone's leaving early, someone is too far over, exploit those things, and you'll be able to really pick apart defenses, and coaches will be able to see that, how you can literally just make the game come to you and you are controlling the game yourself. That is absolutely huge. Now, this third and final question, how to improve arm speed. This comment got 89 likes. So I just assumed that this is a very important topic for people to learn about on. So I think there's a couple things. There's 2 parts to this answer. One part is a way you can work on it actually in the game of like hitting an actual volleyball, but then there's also a kind of outside of the court way that you can definitely improve it, and there's a bunch of things in that as well. So first, in the game with actually hitting, like the mechanics of it, something that I am actually kind of working on right now, but like getting close to pretty much mastering it, is utilizing more of the torque in your body rather than just your arm and your tricep to swing, right? A lot of times I'll get sent in videos of players being like, how can I hit better? And they're fully like folding backwards and then just doing like an ab crunch and swinging only with their arm and tricep. And that's never going to get enough power, because physically that is such a limited movement, right? So what we really truly want to be doing is instead of opening up backwards, we want to be kind of opening up and rotating sideways, right? Because then when we're twisting and we have our kind of our shoulder and chest and upper torso separate from our hips, then we have that kind of tightness in our core to where when we unleash that and we utilize our torque and the power we have in turning our body, that's where a lot of kind of the locked up power is in most hitter swings. It's that you might have a bunch of strength just muscling the ball forward and trying to do an ab crunch, but that next level ability of unlocking that next level of hitting is utilizing your torque and actually opening up your chest, opening up your shoulders, and twisting and opening up back rather than folding backwards, and then utilizing that torque you have and that tightness in your core to unleash and swing your arm and hit it a lot harder. And that also helps with longevity too. The folding and crunching and tricep and shoulder swing is going to lead to some pain over a long enough time period, right? It's not the best thing for longevity. So the best thing for longevity, if you look at all these pro players, is they are practically sideways opening up and utilizing their whole body to swing rather than just tearing their shoulder up to try and hit it as hard as they can. So in game, just work on either on a box or just doing basic approaches from the basic set, not really in game yet. Just work on getting up, but then opening up and twisting backwards and being separate from your hips instead of just folding backwards and like tightening your back and then trying to ab crunch it and bounce the ball with just your triceps and shoulders. So that's the biggest thing in game, is utilizing more of your torque. Outside of the volleyball court, I would say there's definitely some great workouts that I have done, and I'll list like 3 or 4. The first thing that I thought of when I read this comment was something that I did in high school. So something I did in high school was we grabbed tennis balls, and we would have a tennis ball in our hitting arm, and we would do our full approach, super aggressive, get up, and then try and throw the tennis ball down on the floor over the net as hard as we possibly could, right? Just trying to absolutely just like 90 mile an hour fastball that ball into the floor. And I think it really trains kind of your whole body to go more into the fast twitch muscles, right? Like, so when we're running, right, just this is a little bit off topic, but when we're running very long distances, that we're utilizing the slow twitch muscle fibers in our body. But when we're trying to explode and do something quickly, like throwing or hitting or jumping super high, that is utilizing more of our fast twitch muscle fibers, and we can improve those by doing things like this. So having a tennis ball, doing a full approach, and then getting up and opening up and using our torque like we just talked about, but then just throwing that tennis ball as hard as you can really kind of rewires your brain and the mechanisms in your body to train it to be like, okay, we need to go as fast as we can, move our arm as fast as we can, right? Because it's not about strength, it's about how fast your arm is going to when we contact that ball. And a great way to train that is getting a tennis ball, doing a massive approach, getting up and throwing that tennis ball as hard as you can. That's one of the workouts I think was super helpful and beneficial. Another thing is really utilizing band or cable workouts. So a lot of things that you can do in the gym if you're kind of stuck is like, how do I improve my arm speed, right? And you don't really know what to do with weights or cables or bands or whatever. And like, you see all these videos on Instagram of people doing crazy stuff with bands. Just focus on trying to do workouts that emulate the exact movements like in volleyball that you have to do, right? So that's next one is an example, but you can do it with a cable or a band. You're in an athletic stance and your knees are bent and you're a little bit bent over, kind of like a 45-degree angle from your quads and your legs to your torso. And then you have your arm fully out above your head and grabbing the cable. And then you just want to pull that cable down as hard as you can and pull it towards your hip, right? And pull it towards your leg. So essentially you're just grabbing that cable, fully arm extended, and then pulling it down towards your arm. And when we think about it, that's exactly the arm movement that we need when we're hitting, right? So whether it's arm speed or anything else, just try to mimic the same movements you do in volleyball and make it resistance training or weighted or whatever it might be. But that is something that I did for a little while and I think really helped, is just grabbing that cable and working on that movement of strengthening our lat, which is that muscle that is like on your side and on your back that we utilize most for hitting. Utilizing that movement to strengthen and be explosive in that workout, to train our arm again to be quick and to be fast and to react quickly and pull that cable or band as fast as we possibly can. And then another thing, that's something, so I did the tennis ball thing in high school, the cable thing kind of in the weight room by myself, and then something we did in college a lot of was actually neutral grip pull-ups. So normal pull-ups are when you're super wide, right? Like your arms at kind of like a 90-degree angle. Everyone knows what like a normal pull-up looks like. But then there's reverse, like curl pull-ups, where it's essentially kind of like a bicep curl, but your palms of your hands are facing you, and then you're doing a pull-up. That's kind of like a curl pull-up. But what we did at McKendree for a year was neutral grip pull-ups, where it's kind of like you're making two fists, and you can see the front of your hand, right? So you can see your thumb and the fists you're making. So if you just pull up both your arms and make a fist, whatever bars look like that are going to be a neutral grip pull-up, right? And that's essentially training the exact same thing that I just talked about with the cable and with the tennis ball, but pulling your arm down and being explosive every single time you're doing a neutral grip pull-up and pulling yourself up as fast as you can, right? Because we don't want to add a bunch of weight on like a weight belt and then do a pull-up as slow as we can and try to muscle it, because then that's not going to be training our mind and our body to do the right things tactically and physically, right? So neutral grip pull-ups, I think that's a great thing that really helped with just kind of overall strength and power of actually hitting the ball. And then the other two were arm speed for sure. But I think those three workouts and focusing on getting more torque in your swing when you're actually hitting, those four things guarantee you see a massive difference in your arm speed and your hitting abilities just in general for sure. So neutral grip pull-ups, cable pulls with a straight arm, tennis ball throws, full approach and tennis ball throws over a net, and then working on your torque and opening up, having your chest and shoulders separate from your hips every time you swing. Awesome. So that is this week's episode of the VGC Podcast. I hope this really helped. If you guys have any questions, DM me on Instagram, email us at volleyballgrowthcoach@gmail.com, and we will answer those questions as fast as we possibly can. And again, if you have a teammate or a friend that you think can really benefit from a show like this, then share the show with them so we can all grow together.